We are Melbourne Playback Theatre Company and we bring your stories to life through our playback theatre performances. Melbourne Playback uses a form of improvisation that invites our audiences to share stories and then watch as those stories are played back and turned into theatre using creativity and humour and insight. So when we're leading up to a playback performance, our facilitator will meet with the client and have a conversation to find out a bit more about that organisation, if there's any history that we need to know about, a bit of context about the performance and who we're going to be working with on the day, and also find out what sort of themes might that group benefit from exploring through the playback performance. So this briefing process really prepares the facilitator for how they're going to facilitate the playback show. So it informs what types of questions they might ask, making sure that they're really tracking along with the theme that's been discussed with the client. They're also going in though with a whole lot of openness and really ready to listen to what stories are in the room and what people actually want to share and talk about. And our performers even more so. So their job is to listen really deeply to the stories that are shared on the day and then using improvisation and metaphorical techniques, turning those stories into theatre. For example, if there's a story about someone who's feeling isolated or siloed within their organisation, that story might be turned into a desert island adventure where someone's stuck on an island and they really want to reach the mainland and they're just getting little messages in a bottle and trying to find their way back. There's no pre-prepared script for a playback show because our audience are the script writers of the show. So their experiences, their thoughts, their stories, that is what provides the content for the performance and that is what is turned into theatre. So storytelling is incredibly powerful. It's really the basis of our civilizations, our cultures, and also our sense of self is based on the stories that we tell. So what's really unique about what Melbourne Playback does is we create a space where stories can be told within organisations or within peer groups or at conferences, for the stories that need to be told, for them also to be heard and for them to be related to by the people who are listening there in the room. So we often walk away from a performance knowing that people have connected to each other through this process of storytelling, to their organisation or to their industry or whatever that context is, but also to themselves. So at the start of a show, our facilitator will start with some icebreaker questions. They're really about the here and now, getting people into the present moment, sort of landing them in the room and getting them focused. And they might just be questions like, how are you right now? And we'll hear a few words from different people. The facilitator will then hand it back to the performing team and the actors and musician will turn that into what we call moments, which is a short form of theatre. It might be in the form of a tableau or a montage or even a song. And then the facilitator will start to ask questions delving into the theme of the show. After we've had a few moments, we'll move into what we call stories. We're going to keep exploring the theme, but the facilitator's going to ask for a bit more in-depth reflection. And at that point, audience members who would like to tell a story will be invited to come and sit on the stage with the facilitator. And the facilitator will interview them and just flesh out a little bit more about their story, hear it in a bit more depth. Then that will be handed over to the performers who'll play it out in a longer form of playback. And then at the end of that person who's told the story will go and sit back in the audience and we'll have the next story. Not everyone will want to share a story and not everyone has to either. Our work is completely voluntary and by invitation. Having said that, our facilitators are really well experienced at working with groups who might be hesitant or not sure, and they'll use humour and other techniques to make people feel comfortable and create a space where people want to share their story. The difference between playback and role play is that with a playback performance, we've heard the story and we're not just acting it out as we heard it. What the performers are doing is they're listening for what's a metaphorical interpretation of the story or what's a genre that would fit really well or what's the essence or the unspoken or the emotional quality of this story, and that's what they're bringing to the theatre that they're making. And the process of doing that, what it does is it lifts the story from just my story into a more metaphorical or archetypal realm. And when that happens, people who are listening, even though it wasn't their story that's being told, they can often relate to that story. So what happens is there's a connection that's been created from the person who told the story, seeing their story evolved and heightened and turned into theatre, but also the people listening, they're connecting to that story and then to that person, and then we're creating this deeper understanding, deeper connection and empathy between people. Often at the end of a playback performance, people will leave feeling more connected to their organisation, the reason they do what they do, more connected to their colleagues and also to themselves. And because our performances are so high energy and fun, they will often be very entertained. Any type of story, any subject matter, any industry, any age, any story, even the most complex, can be explored through a playback theatre performance. We are yet to meet a group of people whose stories we couldn't play back.